Good morning and welcome to Dublin City FM. You're listening to Council Matters of this beautiful East Wall morning. I'm Mick FitzGerald, and today we are going to be sharing with listeners details of the campaign to save the Hellfire Club. And I'm joined in the studio by David McGunn. David McGunn. David, welcome to East Wall. Welcome to Dublin City FM.
Thank you very much for having me, Mick.
David, we should lay bare the situation, saving the Hellfire Club. You're not a Satanist.
No, not last time I checked anyway. No, absolutely not.
Okay. David, we were discussing it outside, and the Hellfire Club, most Dubliners, we would know it probably more through myth or legend than we would through history. I'm sure you've heard stories about it as well. My favourite story is the one my mother used to tell me as a kid, because we could all see it, and it was like a burnt out building that was over there in the distance that nobody really visited when I was 50 years ago. My mother's explanation for all of this is that there were men, as there always are, men alone playing cards, and somebody was cheating at the cards, and even the devil couldn't abide this cheating, and he came up through the ground and set the building on fire, and that was how it became a wreck. Had you ever heard that one?
It's funny you mention that, because there's obviously a lot. It's very much in in Dubliners' collective memory and culture. Yeah. And it's funny that I was speaking to a number of people, and they actually say that it's almost like within most countries in Europe, there's very much what they call foundation or urban myths, which would change a bit with every generation. And for example, in relation to that's what you've just said is very much seen as the main myth about the Hellfire, but also connected with it is that the fact that they change in generations. So for example, the devil was very much in Irish people's psyche, in times past, bizarrely in the 70s and 80s, when things like the Amityville Horror and possession were the things about myth, and they were the main areas there.
The Exorcist.
Remember that? There was a lot of stories about that type of activity up there. So it's funny that it just shows how ingrained the Hellfire is, that and indeed the flexibility of these myths. But it does make it very important.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting, if you lived on the south side, on the north side, the city wasn't as tall and it wasn't as developed as it was. All you could see was you could see the mountains over there in the background, and you could see this hill with something on the top of it, but nobody was quite too sure what it was. And because of these myths, people didn't tend to visit it, which was quite interesting. So I suspect a lot of these stories grew up around the fact that it was something that was seen, but nobody quite had ever been there to, shall we say, either confirm or deny or those myths.
No, as you say, there's definitively a mystique to it. And that's obviously one thing that certainly that the group Save the Hellfire are very keen on ensuring is safeguarded in whatever may happen next, because it's a very important asset to all people of Dublin, as you've just outlined there.
Yes. Now, here's an interesting one. I think up to the time I was about 12, it certainly wasn't any later than that. I was in a scout troop over on the north side, and we had a place up in Bornabrina or somewhere like that, and one day about 5 or 6 of us went out without scoutmasters or whatever it was, and we decided we will go up there, and we did, and quite literally what we saw was an old Gothic building that was very derelict, no windows, no nothing, just the structure, but in the middle of it was a big black mark, which I thought, maybe that is where the devil appeared, but in retrospect, it was probably where a bunch of hooligans had lit a bonfire.
I think a lot of teenagers have a lot of stories about what they've done up in the Hellfire, some of which are probably not really appropriate for 11:05 in the morning. But yes, absolutely, it is very much a landmark and well known for that reason.
Yeah. the other place with the Hellfire Club, and we won't go into this too much, where it featured quite a bit in, this is in my history rather than in my mythology, was in Sydney. I used to go to this club called the Hellfire Club, where people turned up in leather and we'd have gimps and a whole range of things. So that was quite different from what we would normally expect. But and I'm thinking that's probably not the Hellfire Club you're trying to save.
Well, yeah, certainly, but it's quite likely that activities not dissimilar to them were what happened when it was certainly built in the 1740s, 1750s, and Hellfire Clubs were very much a part of the landed gentry society at the time. And what was very important, one of the reasons why the Hellfire Club was built there at the time in the 1730s, 40s, was because it was close enough to Dublin to allow for the gentlemen to get there and get back relatively easily, obviously with horse-drawn carriages, but it was also far enough away that whatever you got up to would stay up there. So whatever went on in the Hellfire Club would stay in the Hellfire Club. And actually, it's on that particular point, and I think even just whatever the mythology, but the history, like the roads going up there, and it's particularly in the Massey Woods part of the area, that's part of the only remaining part of the military road, which was the road built directly in the aftermath of 1798 to allow for British troops to be brought, because obviously Wicklow and Wexford was the centre of the rebellion at the time. So there is an awful lot of history, an
heritage,
awful lot of heritage of and also agriculturally and environmentally, but there's an awful lot up there.
Yeah. Do we know the history of it? I mean, what I always got the impression is that it was never really a residence per se. It was either, depending on how you want to phrase it, it was either something like a hunting lodge, or dare we say it, even a romper room.
There's two aspects to the history. One to do with the Hellfire itself, and then the property next to it, which is the Massey estate, which are both, and they're basically interlinked.
Okay.
The Hellfire is more or less as you have described it. I won't pretend to be an expert on the actual history, but it was built as a kind of a hunting lodge.
Sure. Yeah.
And it did end up, as I said, it was quite popular in society at the time among certain classes, for louche men of a certain age to enjoy themselves, and that's basically what happened up there. And it appears to have been active from roughly 1740 to roughly the end of the century. That coincided, the end of the century of course coincided when Dublin lost its own parliament, of course, back to Westminster, and then so Dublin became less of a metropolitan area, and some of those dandies, for want of a better expression, would have gone to London. I think just across the way from it is Massey's Wood, which was an estate house that was built in the 1840s, 1850s. In the Massey family. They owned it until the 1920s, 1930s. The last generation basically we're talking about Irish culture and Irish activities, had a bit of a very common Irish illness. He drank too much, and as a result of that, the estate was basically put into receivership by banks. Yet again, there's echoes of modern day Irish society, but owned by banks, and it came into state ownership sometime, I'm not entirely clear of the year, but sometime in the mid 40s. The property itself was knocked down by then.
Was it
was a Downton Abbey type.
Okay, yes.
Now, not quite as large as Downton Abbey, but yet again, that sort of a road to it, and the Massey itself is probably Europe's largest mature broadleaf forest, certainly one of two or three. And yet again, that makes it a very important.
Was it a working farm?
Yes, it was, but said up until the 1920s, 1930s.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's an area I thought I knew, but I really only knew it from looking at it in a distance. And when I knew I was coming to talk to you today, I did what I always do in this day and age: go to the internet. And what's very interesting, I found, is that if you just look at it, if you just key in Hellfire Club, Dublin, Wicklow, or whatever, you'll get a two-dimensional image with a red star in the middle of it, or a red flag or something like that. That tells you location. But what I decided to do then was to go to the 3D maps and the topographical maps, and that gives a much, much better perspective of what you're talking about, because it's all right to say it's full of trees there, but until you actually see that in context, you don't realise This is trees with an area surrounding it rather than a few trees in an area. This is very much a wooded area, is it not?
It's a very. I mean, this is very. I mean, this goes to the heart of the matter, in terms of it's very much. It's not even a green lung. It is. It is literally an interface between the rural and the urban. It's also, in the real proper sense of the word, a wilderness. It's got red squirrel. It's got lettuce spotted woodpeckers. It's got various hen harriers. It has a lot of very rare wildlife, so close as to the urban area. It's basically the area, together with the local farmers, who are covered under things called the REP, Rural Environmental Protection Scheme, and GLASS scheme, which relates to low carbon activity with farming. So all of them, so basically that entire area is basically managed to date, and is in a way that it allows wildlife use, what's called wildlife corridors from the urban into the area. So foxes, badgers, everything can go backwards and forwards from the more urban area further down in sort of suburban Rathfarnham. And yet again, it is really key that be protected and encouraged. I think what's also important is that people, when they think of it, they don't often think of the rivers that run through it. And the Owen Dore River and some of its tributaries go through the area, particularly in Massey's. And that is all part of the Dodder catchment area. And of course, the Dodder is a very important part of the Dublin environmental ecology ecosystem.
Yeah. Am I suspecting it is a lowly populated area?
It is. Yeah,
in the sense that you don't have any encroachments of housing developments or anything like that.
The nearest housing development is off Stocking Lane, Prospect Avenue, which is further down towards sort of what I'll call Old Rathfarnham, so going down towards Grange Road, the Rathfarnham village area. There is obviously the M50, of course, is very close by, and there is obviously a fair bit of development there. But yes, it is very much a rural area at the moment, with rural resources and no main sewerage, for example.
My main reasons for going out to that part of the world these days is I go to a place called Woodtown. And I think the name, I think the name tells you all you need to know in that sense of the word, that this is, well, not entirely an isolated area. It's not surrounded by developments or anything like that, as we say. Now, the reason why I go out there is because we have a burial ground out there. And but what I always notice out there is that the roads are hilly. And the roads are narrow. Is that a feature of that part of the world?
Yes. I mean, it is basically a rural area, and yes, the roads were built. I'm not sure when those particular roads were built. As I said, the original roads date back. Parts of them date back to the 1800s. So they're not designed for modern traffic levels,
parking or anything,
or parking. Clearly, there's a car park at the Hellfire, and it's used quite a lot of the weekends. But But by the way, during the week there's not a lot of people up there. Apart from lunatics like me who walk dogs nearly every day up there. But apart from that, but obviously at the weekend there's a lot. But yes, the any development would have to take into account the fact that there'd be a lot of work involved and it needs a lot of consultation over just given the actual infrastructure that is there, that frankly is not designed for a large development at this time.
Can I ask you, David, what's your association with the area? Do you live there?
I live in, born and bred in Rathfarnham,
but
just the area.
What we would say a golf shot away.
I'm not. My golfing is rather bad, so so my golf shot would be very short. But so I've worked and lived abroad for quite some time, and but I always wanted to live back in Rathfarnham, and I mean just
this is your back garden.
This is my back garden, and I think what's very key for people to be aware of as well is that there are obviously lots of parks in Rathfarnham, and Marley Park, St Enda's, out towards the Tala direction, there's Timon Park, but they are all parks.
Exactly.
They're
cultivated.
They're all cultivated. Yes. There is no wildlife. Yeah. There's the odd grey squirrel, but there isn't. And I think it's very important, therefore, that anything that's done preserves this area for, and not only locals like me, but preserves people for everyone. And bear in mind, it's free. You can come up there. You just park your car. You go for a walk. Certainly, I know a lot of people. You meet a lot of people up there who think that this is the best medicine there is. And let's face it, you're so close to the hurly-burly of life with the M50, not that within 7 minutes away. Yet within 7 minutes, you can forget all your troubles. And I think that is very important and needs to be preserved.
Yeah. It's the area, if I'm correct, comes under the shall we say, the responsibility of South Dublin County Council. Is that right?
That's correct.
I appreciate it's near borders, but
it's
who
near,
has the direct responsibility for it?
The area is Killickey Road, which is basically where it is within South Dublin County Council area. It's within the Rathfarnham Temple Oak Ternier ward. It's within 500 metres of the Dunleary Rathdown area. And I think actually 2 constituencies. So Dublin South West is also very close there to, I think it's Dublin South or South Dublin.
Yes, that large one there.
Which was cut. So it's Dublin Rathdown, but I think it's Dublin Rathdown. It's now called.
Indeed.
So it's on. It's on unadministered borders, but it is in South Dublin County Council, and the land is currently in the ownership of Coillte, which obviously owns it, and manages it on behalf of the state.
You've got a bit of a hybrid local government, national government issue here. Is that correct?
Indeed, yeah. That's correct, and obviously we've been trying to talk to both parties, obviously. Yeah.
You're with the Hellfire Action Group, and there is a campaign called Save the Hellfire Club, if I'm correct. Now, when I looked at that and I thought, and then I started reading some literature, I thought to myself, that Save the Hellfire Club, while a good eye-catching slogan, can potentially be misleading. Are they actually looking to save the building, or what are they looking to do with the building? I didn't get the impression that they were looking to restore the building.
No, so I think the answer to that is that there's the building itself, and there's also Neolithic cairns around the area.
Sure, yes.
And we do understand that there are quite a number of national monuments there around the area, which obviously are protected under separate legislation. But what we're actually trying to find out as a group, just what exactly is being planned, and we're actually having some difficulty. We know that the council approved a plan of. Sorry, we'll say the council approved. We understand that the council, not the elected members as such, but we understand that there was some form of approval process for a development plan for the area in March of last year, April of last year. We also know that they applied for grant funding from Fáilte Ireland in August for what is called, quote unquote, a flagship tourist development. And the interesting thing about that is that the South Dublin County's own statutory development plan makes it clear that any development has to be sensitive to the area and the amenities. And further, the Hellfire and Massey are both protected under what's called Section 8 and 9 of the plan, which is to do with heritage and cultural heritage and ecological and cultural environment. And for example, the view is protected, what they call the prospect. And so we're actually trying to find out what exactly they have in mind. No one is saying that it is not my understanding that anyone's trying to do anything to the Hellfire building per se, but it's the curtilage of the area,
of course,
which is obviously very
well. That's it. Again, and you might be able to help me out on this one. When I looked at all of this, and I could say I saw 4 entities involved with South Dublin Council, Coillte Ireland, suppose we could call it the national government itself, and Fáilte. I was trying to work out who is the initiative coming from, and the impression I got was the initiative was actually coming from Fáilte. Am I right in that, or is it really a South Dublin driving now? Are they the driving force?
I think the best way of putting it is that our understanding is that Coillte and South Dublin County Council have entered into a memorandum of understanding. We are unaware of the details of that memorandum of understanding.
Would be useful to find out.
It would be useful. We have a Freedom of Information Act request in with South Dublin County Council, and interesting, we were trying to engage South Dublin even on do they follow all relevant guidelines into regard how freedom of information should actually be conducted in various policies. But we do have that in there. in there with them. They have not provided us with any information as possible, but we are in a process, and we'll obviously go through that process. So those two parties have done some kind of agreement. They've applied for funding from Fáilte Ireland. Fáilte Ireland, in fairness, when we've contacted them, have made us aware of the nature of the process which South Dublin and Coillte have gone through. As I said, to be honest, now, what I will make it very clear is that Fáilte Ireland, for example, has responded to all letters in a timely manner. We sent 2 registered letters to Coilte's chief executive and received no response to date. A local area representative in Coillte has been talking to some of the landowners, but there hasn't actually been any engagement on the wider issues, or certainly with the wider community, and there has been attempts to do so. And South Dublin, yes, they are obviously responding to us, and we understand that they will be meeting with us. So we look forward to that.
Yeah. I'm probably putting on my cynical hat here, and I think nobody is going to spend 19 million so that people will go and have a look at a derelict building. Presumably then the intention is that really we're investing this amount of money so that people will come and perhaps have a look at the environment, that it's pure coincidence, or at least it's a happy coincidence that there's a derelict building there that we can set our focus on. Is that pretty much the issue in that sense of the word?
I think basically where it's as simple as this. There's clearly a desire by South Dublin County Council and Coillte to do something with the land. Some people within Coillte and South Dublin have said they want to do it in a sustainable, environmentally sensitive way, and we would support that. We just feel that tripling the number of visitors, which is what they're aiming to do, the building of a interpretive centre, which frankly we cannot find any details on, and indeed we're not entirely certain if what has been finalised or not. So we want to know where we're actually at in reality. Because the interesting thing is we understand that quite a lot of detail had to go into Fáilte Ireland. And we would just like to see what that detail is.
Okay, can I put it something to you? Out in Clontarf, we've had a big issue about the old Clontarf baths, and essentially, although they're saying they're renovating the baths, essentially what we're getting is a restaurant with a bit of a bathing facility. Is that what you're getting up in the Hellfire? Are you going to get a restaurant with a bit of an interpretive centre latched on that will probably be run for profit?
Well, we understand that there will be a commercial element. There will be a restaurant or some kind of venue activity. We are trying to find out details of what that is. And yet again, if you do read the Fáilte Ireland material, and it's understandable because obviously Fáilte Ireland is to try to develop tourism as an industry. If you look at that, they very much see this type of project as being. When they talk about sustainability, they talk about economic sustainability.
Of course it do.
And that is a key perspective for them. And that, of course, is perfectly appropriate for Fáilte Ireland. And what we're saying is South Dublin County Council and Coillte want to do that. They should engage fully and in a meaningful way with interested parties. Yeah.
Is there any idea of whether they're going to look at putting the area in question under a separate title so that they can then have a different regime, as we say, from the hybrid we've got at the moment?
We don't know. All we know is that there is the plan for the interpretive centre. There's also a plan for some form of overhead walkway from the Hellfire lands into the Massey lands. All of the locals have a lot of concern, particularly that would impact on the view. And I said that is a protected element under the plan. So we are wondering how that's working out. And yet again, anywhere we've heard of this type of activity would all indicate that it was going to be a much more manicured experience, which obviously is what people don't want. They want the natural element preserved. So like it probably sounds like I'm answering your questions with more questions or we're not certain, but it's the heart of the matter that we need more engagement.
Well then, can I put something to you, David? I suspect that like most things, traffic's probably not going to be huge Monday to Thursday, but maybe say Saturday, Sunday could be quite a busy period. Those roads would get very clogged up if some of these figures are met. Is that your fear as well?
Absolutely. I mean, those roads get busy as it is at the weekend.
Yeah, and a couple of tourist buses would really do a little number on it as well, wouldn't it?
Well, look, it's great that people want to see the area, and obviously we would encourage people to see the area, but it needs to be done in a controlled and sensible way and engagement with all parties.
And at the moment, how would you describe the level of consultation? Would you describe it as perfectly acceptable, or do you think they can do a bit better?
I think there needs to be a fair bit more work on the consultation process.
David, we're about to run out of time. You've got a website and you've got a campaign going. Can you let the listeners know about that?
www.savethehellfire.com, info@savethehellfire, all lowercase.com, and our Twitter handle, and I think that's the right word, is @savethehellfire, SAVETHEHELLFIRE.
Yeah, and I am just going to warn people, if you type in Hellfire Club, you could come up with a bondage disco in Sydney. If you ever go there, it's pretty good, but it's not got anything to do with the saving and preserving the environment in the Dublin Mountains. Well, that's our hardy programme today, and I just want to thank Lauren on the desk for getting us into another fabulous position. I want to thank David McGunn and all our friends from the Hellfire Action Group and the Massey Woods Action Group as well for joining us today. I'm Mick Fitz. I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the day.